two more. Davante Adams now is in 7th place all-time in receiving touchdowns in the NFL with 117 touchdowns. Welcome to Just the Stats, NFL Top 10's for Tuesday. Good morning. My name's Ernie Jennings, and we are off looking at the rest of the Sunday games plus the Monday night game. Monday night game was interesting. Yeah, the score I guess it was out of reach by the fourth quarter, but it was a fairly entertaining game for the most part. Full of unfortunate situations for the Giants, put them on the losing end, but we'll talk about them on the last game we talk about. We're going to talk about the rest of the Sunday games that we didn't talk about yesterday. So if you want to hear about most of the early games, go to the podcast I did yesterday, which was the NFL Top 10's for Monday, and you can listen to my takes on those top 10 players in any of the games there might have been in those games. And if you watch it on Just the Stats NFL, you can see the video, the top 10 charts that I post along with it in the video, so that you're not just looking at me, but you're looking at charts, show where the players stand, current NFL players versus other players, whether they're on their team or in the NFL. So we got a big game to talk about when we get to the Rams game. But before we do that, we've got to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Arizona Cardinals game. So we'll start right there. This game was won by the Buccaneers 20-17. Buccaneers really needed a win. They've had a rough time of it. They've had some very difficult opponents, and they haven't been able to beat them. And they came away with a tough win against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the week before, Arizona Cardinals lost to the Jaguars in overtime. The Cardinals have figured out a way to lose more games. It's one of those, it's just a bad season for them. You know, in some sense, they play these same games again. They might win half of them because of just some of the oddities that happens in the games. But in this game, they lost. Tampa Bay really needed this win to stay on top of their division, which is now very tight. We'll talk about that game, another game in that division next. But for the Arizona Cardinals, Jacoby Brissett has looked so much better than Murray. It's really sad because Murray seems like he's such a fun guy to watch play quarterback, but just the idea of standing in the pocket and throwing the ball, Brissett has him hands down on that. So Jacoby Brissett, 29 completions on 40 attempts, so a lot of passes, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Now, Bam Knight was their leading runner. I think Benson should be back next week, and so they would not have to put these backups in there. Bam Knight, 11 carries, 62 yards, not bad. Michael Carter, 5 for 17. Now, in the receiving department, again, it was Trey McBride, one of the best, if not the best tight end in the NFL. 8 catches on 9 targets, 82 yards. So 8 catches, 82 yards, 1 touchdown. Decent game for him again, averaging 10 yards a catch, but they needed him. Marvin Harrison looked good in this game until he got hurt. 6 catches, 69 yards. So another, basically a little over 10 yards a catch, 11 yards. And Bam Knight, so not only did he have 62 yards rushing, he also had 36 yards and a touchdown receiving. So he had a total of 98 yards in this game. So not bad for him. Problem for the Cardinals, though, again, interception by Brissett and a fumble by Bam Knight just cost them. You lose by 3 points, that's costly. On the other hand, Tampa Bay, no turnovers, even though they did have a fumble, but it was not a turnover. Now, in this game, Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield, just okay. 18 completions on 28 attempts, 194 yards, 1 touchdown. Now, Chris Godwin did drop a pass in the end zone, which would have really bumped those stats up. Bucky Irving was back and carried the ball many more times than I thought he would. 17 carries, 61 yards. So, a little under 4 yards a carry, but still, it's nice for the team to have him back. Had 1 touchdown as well. And I mean, when he got back, 17 carries for him, Rachaad White and Sean Tucker, who had been filling in, they each had 2 carries. So Baker Mayfield was the second leading rusher with 6 carries for 27 yards. But yeah, they got Bucky Irving back and they really used him. Now, Rachaad White did have 3 catches for 22 yards, but Bucky Irving had 2 catches for 20 yards. So even in that area, Bucky Irving's almost back. So I figure next week he'll even show up bigger than he did. Now, in this game for Tampa Bay, no receiver had more than 4 catches, and that was Emeka Egbuka with 4 catches, 42 yards. Even though he was targeted the most times, 8 times. Now, Chris Godwin had the most yards on 3 catches. He had 78 yards. One was 31 yards. So he really was probably a pleasant addition to this team for Baker Mayfield. He just needed another target other than Emeka Egbuka, and now he's got it. I mean, Cade Otton was there as a tight end, but it's not the same. And so with Egbuka back and Mike Evans is supposed to be back soon. Now, whether it's next week, week after, that's going to really boost this offense with 3 excellent wide receivers, and then you've got Bucky Irving in the backfield. That will really help out Baker Mayfield. All right, now in this game also, no top 10s. There were some I was hoping for, especially Calais Campbell. He needs another tackle for loss to move up in that number. He's shooting for, he won't reach it this year, and I don't know if he'll play another year, but he's close to the all-time record. But, toward the end of his career, he's just not getting the same amount of tackles for loss that you would normally see. In fact, in this game, he only had 1 tackle, period. But he is, like I said, been around a long time playing in the NFL and still plays at a high level. All right, next game. That is another game that affected this division, and that was the Rams came to the Carolina Panthers Stadium probably expecting to win the game, but they did not. Amazingly, the Carolina Panthers beat the Los Angeles Rams 31-28. So the Carolina Panthers are still just a half game behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Rams 9-3 now, and so is Seattle at 9-3. That division is super tight, but this was a loss for the Rams that no one expected. And the loss came because of 3 turnovers on the part of Stafford. He had a fumble. He had 2 interceptions. He hadn't had an interception for 10 weeks. So this just was a game where everything went right for Carolina, and they pulled out a win. I mean, it's impressive. I heard a stat, they're the only team that's beat the Rams and the Packers. So the Carolina Panthers, they're a team that's mystifying. I mean, they shut out Atlanta one time. They beat the Packers. They beat the Rams. But then they lose bad games. I mean, they just lose some games badly. They lost to the 49ers, got stomped by them. So it's a hard team to figure. And the Rams, still, I think, the best team. I don't know if I'm going to rate them that way. We'll see. It took 3 turnovers, and they barely lost the game 31-28. Now, in this game, Matthew Stafford, 18 for 28, only 18 completions, but 243 yards, another 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. Like I said, he hadn't thrown an interception in quite some time. I think he only had 2 interceptions on the season. He was like 30 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions going into the game. Rushing, Blake Corum and Kyron Williams, they both had good games. Kyron Williams, 13 carries, 72 yards and a touchdown. Blake Corum, 7 carries, 81 yards and a touchdown. So they rushed for 152 yards. And yet, usually you rush for that much, you're going to win. In the receiving department, Puka Nacua had the most receptions with 6 on 9 targets for 72 yards. But somebody you wouldn't expect is Xavier Smith, 3 catches for 82 yards. And Devontae Adams, man alive. We're going to look at this. He is just racking up the touchdowns. He had 4 catches for 58 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's amazing and you would almost want to triple team this guy in the end zone. I mean, he's just incredible when he gets in the end zone. And Matthew Stafford just looks doesn't look straight at him, but he's going to him. It's been impressive, those two, when they get near the end zone. Now for Carolina, Bryce Young really had a good game. 15 completions, 20 attempts, so very efficient, 75%. 206 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Really a good game there. The same goes in the rushing department. Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. Chuba Hubbard actually was better in this game, carried it 1 less time, but 17 carries, 83 yards. Rico Dowdle, 18 carries, 58 yards. And then Bryce Young himself, 5 carries for 23 yards. So they rushed the ball 40 times in this game for 106. So 4 yards a carry. I mean, they really were determined to run the ball and pass when they needed to. And 206 yards on 15 completions is a really good, yards per attempt. Now in the game, Jalen Coker, big game for him. Only player on the Carolina team with 4 receptions. Only one, yeah. He had 4 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown. I mean, Tedero McMillan only had 1 catch. It was for 43 yards and a touchdown, though. Only targeted twice. So you can see if they have the option, they're going to run this ball. If they're in this game, and they were, halftime it was very close. It was now the Rams were winning 21-17, but it was close. And then Carolina pulled ahead in the third quarter, but it was a close game, so Carolina runs the ball. Now, in the game also, those running backs, Rico Dowdle, 58 yards rushing and another 21 receiving, so he had 79 yards. Chuba Hubbard had 83 rushing and 41 receiving, so he had 124 yards total. Big games by the running backs, whether it was running or receiving. This is probably the best game I've seen Chuba Hubbard have in a while. All right, now, there was no top 10s for the Carolina Panthers, but for the Rams, in a losing effort, they had several. And we'll start with Stafford. Stafford needed 153 yards passing to move up past Matt Ryan for 8th place. Well, he got it. In this game, he had 243 yards. So Matthew Stafford now has 62,882 yards to pass Matt Ryan for 8th spot all time in the career passing yards in the NFL. Very impressive career for Matthew Stafford. Now, he passed him. Next up is Phillip Rivers, who's in 7th with 63,440. So he needs another 600 yards, a little under 600 yards, which could be anywhere from 2 to 4 games. So before the end of the season, I fully expect him to at least pass Phillip Rivers for 7th, but now Matthew Stafford in 8th place. So big game for him. Unfortunately, it was in a loss. Obviously, he wouldn't consider it a big game when you lose, and he threw 2 interceptions. But still, he's had quite a career. Pretty good that you have 2 players in the NFL currently playing in the top 10 all-time in career passing yards. That's Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford. All right, next up is Kyren Williams. Now, he had a couple of records he was trying to work on as far as top 10s go. He needed 29 yards rushing. He had 72 in this game. So with that, he moved ahead of Les Josephson. Les Josephson was in 8th place. He played from 64 to 74, so quite a while back. But Kyren Williams passed him. He now has 3,450 yards to move into 8th place all time for the Los Angeles Rams in rushing yards. Now he has the opportunity to pass one more guy this year, and that's Dan Towler, who has just under 3,500 yards. So he only needs 43 yards to catch Dan Towler. He'll probably get to him next week. After that, Todd Gurley's in sixth, but he's got over 5,000 yards. So that's a next year thing for Kyren Williams. It may not even get it then, but we'll see. So Kyren Williams now in eighth place all time in rushing yards for the Los Angeles Rams. Also, he needed just one touchdown to move into a tie with Wendell Tyler for seventh place, and he got it. He was in eighth place by himself. Now with that one touchdown, he moves into a tie with Wendell Tyler, who played from 1977 to 82. They both have 33 rushing touchdowns. So Kyren Williams, you don't hear him mentioned a lot, but he's just an all-round efficient running back. I mean, 13 carries, 72 yards. That's a excellent yards per carry. And then you're going to see him normally you see him at least in some receptions. He only had one target, but no catches in this game. But he can catch the ball as well, but he is just a good, solid runner. You don't hear a lot about, but he has been moving up this Los Angeles Rams list. Next up for him, Dick Bass, who played in the 60s with 34. So he only needs one more again to move up to sixth place. Next up is Davante Adams. This guy has been incredible. When it comes to NFL record, he needed a touchdown to tie Antonio Gates for seventh place all time. Well, he passed him. He got two. So Davante Adams now has 117 touchdown receptions. He was not even in the top 10 when he started the season. But he just continues to rack up the receiving touchdowns. And with two more, Davante Adams now is in seventh place all time in receiving touchdowns in the NFL with 117 touchdowns. Just amazing. Now, next up for him is Larry Fitzgerald, whose career ended in 2020, not too long ago, 5 years now. It didn't seem that long ago, but 5 years ago. He had 121 receiving touchdowns. So 4 more for Davante Adams. He's on a pace. I know they're running out of games. They got 5 to go. But he's on a pace. He's averaging more than 1 a game. So he has a definite chance to actually move into sixth place all time. Now, Jerry Rice, he's got this. Davante Adams would have to keep up the pace he's on at least to catch Jerry Rice, who has 197 receiving touchdowns. Huge lead over Randy Moss, who's second with 156. It's impressive, and I'm not taking anything away from Jerry Rice's career. He was an amazing, deserves all the accolades, but part of the thing with him getting these records is the amount of years he put in. He put in 20 years of time, and that longevity just helped him to get where he was. I mean, Randy Moss is second, and he played 14 years. And so far, Davante Adams has played 11 years or 12 years. So, if Davante Adams plays 8 more years, I can't believe he wouldn't catch Jerry Rice, but I doubt seriously he plays 8 more years. I wouldn't expect him to play more than 2 or 3 more years. So just a difference. Jerry Rice stayed in such good physical shape to be able to continue to play for such a long period as a wide receiver. All right, that's all the records in this game. I mean, there was a lot of them, but we do need to move on to the next game. The Minnesota Vikings came into Seattle, and they should have just stayed home. In fact, you might have felt like they did. Seattle beat Minnesota 26-0. Now, I had Seattle as my fantasy football defense, and they carried me to a victory. Their defense just was Max Brosmer. Let's just start with that. 19 completions on 30 attempts. It seems all right. Only 126 yards, 4 interceptions, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Every time he went back to pass, you felt like he was going to throw an interception, and he did 4 times. He was sacked 4 times as well. They just couldn't get anything going. This game was I mean, Seattle honestly scored only 26 points. They could have scored, I don't even know, 40, 50 if they wanted to, but they had the game wrapped up. It was 13-0 at halftime, 19-0 after the third quarter, and then it ended up 26-0. There was no need for them to do anything special. And, you're not going to go out of your way when you're just winning without even trying. I mean, they just put it on Minnesota. It was embarrassing, really, for Minnesota, who's now 4-8. Max Brosmer definitely is not good. He's not as good, which is sad to say. He's not as good as J.J. McCarthy. The Minnesota Vikings have made a blunder in their decision to give up Sam Darnold, who they just got done playing with, who's with Seattle now, who beat them probably, and really Sam Darnold probably really enjoyed this game against Minnesota. You know, to put it on him like this. I mean, Sam Darnold only was 14 for 26, so really not that great. Just over 50%, 128 yards for him, no touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked 4 times. It wasn't too big of a game for him. It was really the defense, the Seattle defense. No team had a carrier who had more than 56 yards. That was Kenneth Walker rushing. I mean, Minnesota had 66 yards rushing. Again, nothing there. 96 yards total net yards passing. So they only had 62 yards of offense in the entire game. But Seattle, they only had 219. So it wasn't a big game there. It was just the defense. It was just all over Minnesota. 4 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery, 4 sacks. Pressured him all day long. And it ended up with Seattle winning this game. Like I said, it was not a good game for their star player, Jackson Smith-Njigba. This was his worst game by far. Only had 2 catches for 23 yards. But with those 2 catches, he was trying to break in. He needed 1 catch to catch Brian Blades to move into the top 10 all-time in receptions for the Seattle Seahawks. Well, with 2, he tied Tyler Lockett for 9th place. They both have 82 receptions now. This is on a season level I'm talking about here, actually. I should put it that way. So he's in the top 10 now with still 5 games to go. He holds the record with 100 receptions along with Tyler Lockett. So he has a chance to break his own record. This was the worst game he's had all season. And again, they didn't have to throw the ball. This game was dominated by the defense on Seattle, and there was no need for them to make any real effort to throw the ball much, and they didn't. So it really cost Smith-Njigba as far as stats go, but it's a win. That's more important. So that was the only record in this particular game. All right, we got to move on to the next game, and that is the Buffalo Bills versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is another game where the one-sided type of a game. Buffalo Bills win this game 26-7. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers made it look like it was going to be a game at halftime. They were actually winning 7-3. But in reality, it had more to do with Buffalo's inefficiency and rather than the Pittsburgh offense. Josh Allen threw an interception, but then he came back later in the game and played really well. Wasn't sacked. He did have the 1 interception, had a touchdown as well. He was 15 for 23, so he only threw the ball for 123 yards, but didn't need to because you had James Cook rushing for 144 yards on 32 attempts, and then Ray Davis had 9 rushes for 62 yards. Josh Allen, 8 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown, and then Ty Johnson, 2 carries for 5 yards. They rushed the ball 51 times. That's a huge amount. I mean, I thought 40 for 164 was good, but 51 times they rushed it for 249 yards. That's, almost 5 yards a carry for everybody on the team versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had 18 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown. What a difference. Aaron Rodgers didn't look good at all. Mason Rudolph was in for 3 attempts, 0 completions, and 1 interception. So obviously that was horrendous. Aaron Rodgers, like I said, 10 completions for 21 attempts. So that's not even 50% for 117 yards. Just a rough game for Pittsburgh. Their offense looked terrible. Couldn't run the ball. Jaylen Warren had 10 carries for 35 yards and a touchdown. Just was a bad game all the way around for them. Aaron Rodgers didn't have an interception. He didn't have an interception, but he did have a fumble. That was a huge mistake on his part. James Cook, which is odd for him, he did have a very good game when you look at the yards. 144 rushing, 33 receiving, so he had 177 yards, but he did have 2 fumbles, one which he lost. You don't usually see that out of James Cook. Now in this game, he needed 92 yards to move up as far as Buffalo Bills go in rushing yards. Well, he got 144, so that was good enough to actually bump him up a couple of spots. He passed LaShawn McCoy, a great Buffalo Bill running back from 2015 to 2018, and then Travis Henry, who played from 2001 to 2004. He passed them both. He now has 3,866 yards for James Cook. That's rushing yards for the Buffalo Bills, which is good enough now to put him into 6th place all time. Now next up for him is Joe Cribbs, who played in the 80s with that team that went to the Super Bowl numerous times, could not pull out a win though. He's got over 4,400 yards, so that's 600 more yards for James Cook. That's a possibility with 5 games to go, but probably very doubtful. I wouldn't expect it, but definitely next year, not only does he have a chance to catch Joe Cribbs, Josh Allen's in 4th right now with over 4,500 yards. James Cook will pass him next year, so he'll end up passing both of those players, most likely. All right, let's move on to our next game. That is the Los Angeles Chargers, is what I'm referring to, versus the Las Vegas Raiders, who just look horrible. Chargers win that game 31-14. They are now 8-4. The Raiders are 2-10, so they're vying for draft position. Now in this game, Geno Smith, 18 for 23. That doesn't seem too bad, actually. Only 5 incompletions, only 165 yards, had 2 touchdowns. He did have an interception, and he was sacked another 5 times. Christian Genti, another bad game. Their offensive line is horrendous. 15 carries for 31 yards, so that's just 2 yards a carry. He did have 6 catches for another 30 yards, so he had 61 yards in the game. That's it, though. Now, Brock Bowers had a decent game. 4 catches, 63 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Big game for him. Other than that, that was it. 31 yards rushing, 165 yards receiving, so a total of 196 yards in that game versus the Chargers. Justin Herbert, 15 for 20. Trey Lance came in for 1 completion on 1 attempt. But Herbert, 15 for 20, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception. We'll have to see how his health is after this game. Now, Kimani Vidal had a big game. Now, he's been such an iffy up and down kind of guy, but 25 carries, 126 yards, and a touchdown. Really had a good game. 59-yard run in this game he had. So that's over 5 yards a carry. That's nice. Nice to see. And then Patterson came in also, 11 carries for 54 yards. So they had 43 rushing attempts in this game for 192 yards. And again, it's a game which was close at halftime. It was only 7-7 at halftime, but then the Chargers came out back in the third quarter with 14 and then another 10 in the fourth to just really shut the door on the Raiders. Now in the receiving department for the Raiders, nobody really. 2 players with 4 catches, but Ladd McConkey led the team with only 39 yards receiving, but he did have a touchdown. Now, Keenan Allen in this game, talk about him now. He had 4 catches for 30 yards in this game. He needed only 1 reception to move into a tie with Steve Smith for 13th. This is the only top 10 that I'm keeping that has more than 10 players on it. And that's because every one of these players on this list has at least 1,000 receptions in their NFL career. 18 players total with 1,000 or more receptions in the history of the NFL. And what's amazing about that is 4 of them are playing right now. Well, Keenan Allen was the only one that was moved up another position. He moved into 13th, passing Steve Smith, because Keenan Allen, with those 4 catches, now has 1,034 receptions in his NFL career. Just an impressive career. The only one ahead of him that's active is Travis Kelce, who has 1,063. Now, Travis Kelce needs 7 catches to tie Reggie Wayne for 10th. He'd be the first one of these 4 current players to actually make it into the top 10. He needs 7 more receptions. Keenan Allen needs, 6? I don't see that. His reception totals have really dropped. Davante Adams has 1,009. He doesn't get a lot. He had 4 in his game. It's more about the touchdowns for him. He leads all these players by far in touchdown receptions. I think DeAndre Hopkins might be second. He's got 80-something. So Adams is just crushing in that department. And then DeAndre Hopkins was the last guy who did it last week. He got his receptions. He now has 1,001 to become the 4th player currently playing. 3 of these players started their career in 2013, and then Davante Adams started his career in 2014. So they've been around, but what a draft class in 2013 that 3 of the receivers in that draft class are all 1,000 receptions or more. Impressive. All right, let's move on. We got to get these games wrapped up. The Denver Broncos versus the Washington Commanders. Wow. This was a tight game, went into overtime. It was in Washington, but the Denver Broncos were able to pull it out 27-26 in overtime. That's how close it was. That was quite a game. In this game, sorry about that delay there, but in this game, Bo Nix, one of his bigger games, 29 completions on 45 attempts, 321 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So big passing game for him. He hadn't thrown that for that many yards in quite a while. Rushing, and probably because rushing-wise, they did nothing. R.J. Harvey, 13 carries, 35 yards, so just under 3 yards a carry. He did have 2 touchdowns, though. And then Jaleel McLaughlin, 6 carries for 24 yards. So really nothing in the running department. They had 87 total yards. But in receiving, Evan Ingram led the team with 6 catches for 79 yards on 9 targets. He was targeted the most, had the most reception. Cortland Sutton, their top wide receiver, did have a decent game. 5 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown in this game. Now, Troy Franklin, who had been up there with Cortland Sutton quite a bit, only 2 catches on 3 targets for 21 yards, so not much from him. It was pretty much the tight end, Ingram and Sutton. Now, for the Commanders, Marcus Mariota was playing 28 completions on 50 attempts, threw the ball 50 times, 28 completions, 294 yards, so not as efficient as Bo Nix was. 2 touchdowns, though, 1 interception. And Marcus Mariota led the team in rushing on 10 carries for 55 yards. Chris Rodriguez, 11 carries for 41 yards. So, 5 yards a carry for Marcus Mariota versus just under 4 for Chris Rodriguez. McNichols, 6 carries for 30 yards. And Krosky Merritt, 4 carries for 20 yards. So they rushed for 143 yards on 33 attempts. That's, 4 yards a carry. That's not bad. And generally, you think you're going to win when you rush that much. Like I said, you see that stat more often than not, you do win. But the interception hurts. And, they had a couple of fumbles. They didn't lose them, but that just hinders you. Now, Zach Ertz, 10 catches for 106 yards on 13 targets. Wow, 10 catches. That's one of his best games ever. Now, Terry McLaurin finally was back playing, and it showed that he was definitely needed. They threw him the ball 14 times. He had 7 catches on those 14 targets for 96 yards and 1 touchdown. So you expect to see him improve even more on the connections between the two of them going into these final weeks. Unfortunately, it's probably too late for the Commanders. They're only 3-9. They're not making the playoffs, so they're pretty much out of it. Now, in this game for Denver, you had 2 players as far as tackles for loss to trying to move up the list all time. And that was Nick Benito, who's been one of their best defenders. He had a tackle for loss, as did Jonathan Cooper had a tackle for loss. So Jonathan Cooper was trying to make it into the top 10. He tied Bradley Chubb now, who played from 2018 to 2022. They both have 33. So Jonathan Cooper is now in 10th place with Bradley Chubb. Now, Nick Benito was tied for 7th with Ian Gold, who played in the 2000s, 2000 to 2007. Ian Gold had 39, but Nick Benito now has 40 to move into 7th place by himself with 40. So next up for him in 6th place is Elvis Demerville, who played from 2006 to 2012. He has 44. So he needs 4 more tackles for loss. But good game for both of those players as far as that goes. All right, next up, the Monday night game between the New York Giants and the New England Patriots. This is a game that New England was up 30-7 at halftime, and that they just coasted the rest of the way. And it really was kind of a strange game. New York hurt themselves early in the game when they were trying to keep it close. Jackson Dart got hit a couple of times in close calls, but they were legit non-penalty situations. He was running out of bounds was one of the key ones. And instead of going out a step earlier so he doesn't get drilled, he waited as he was right at the sideline, got drilled. Well, that caused some of his offensive linemen to go over there and created a penalty. 15-yard personal foul on the Giants. And so instead of being down the field with a first down, moving toward a score, which would have kept them in this game, now it's like 1st and 25, and that hindered them. And then later in the game, not that late, much later, but when they're trying to come back again after the Patriots had scored, now this was a penalty that should have been called. Their return man on the kickoff return, Gunnar Olszewski, got hit. He fumbled the ball, but he was hit helmet to helmet. I mean, they showed it in the highlight. It was just drilled. The guy was knocked out on the field. And when they showed him walking off, you can see his eyes. He doesn't even know where he is. He's stumbling. They had to help him off the field. And yet no penalty was called on that play. That should have definitely been a penalty. But instead, the New England Patriots get the ball on that fumble by the kick returner. So between those two plays, that really hurt the Giants. And not to say that they would have won, but it might have been a closer game because really the New England Patriots, this is another game where Drake May had a good game, but he probably could have had an even bigger game if he really wanted to. It was just too much offense for the Giants. So Jackson Dart, 17 completions for 24 attempts, 139 yards and 1 touchdown. Sacked only twice, but he was drilled. He really needs to figure out how to not take that hit like that. Man, one of them on the sidelines, he was just knocked clean off his feet. For New England, Drake May, 24 completions on 31 attempts, so very good there. 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was sacked 3 times in this game. Now, in this game, there were no top 10s. It was just a game dominated all the way around. The Giants had a total of 250 yards of offense versus 400 yards plus for the New England Patriots. And like I said, the Patriots probably could have, who knows, it's one of those games where they could have put up a lot of points if they had wanted to. All right, that is a wrap there were some big games. Man, there's some big games coming up, next week as well. But in this series, the Buccaneers needed to win. They won. Panthers needed to win to stay in right there behind the Buccaneers. They won. The Seahawks needed to win to stay in touch with the Rams, and they won while the Rams lost, so they're tied. The Bills needed to win, as did Pittsburgh, because the Bills are trying to catch. Well, first of all, the Bills are just trying to stay in the playoffs. They're a 7th seed right now, so they need to win just to be in the playoffs, but they're trying to stay, if at all possible, in touch with the New England Patriots if they happen to stumble. But Pittsburgh definitely needed this win. They lost. But that's still a tight division between Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and now even Cincinnati. And then the Chargers needed to win. They won. They needed to win to stay in touch, in as far as playoff. They're 6th seed right now, and stay ahead of Kansas City, who lost. And then the Broncos, they're one team could afford a loss, as well as the Patriots. But those two teams, the Broncos and the Patriots, who both won, are fighting it out for the number 1 seed in the AFC. So that's an important game for them as far as that goes. They're both making the playoffs. It's just a matter of where they're seated. All right, that is a wrap. We'll talk about that in our next podcast, the standings. We'll look at that a little bit more and the playoff scenarios. All right, please like and subscribe. This went a little bit long, but I had 7 games to cover. I'll have to figure out a way next week. There's 4 buys, 4 teams on bye next week. And after that, everybody will be back on schedule for the rest of the year. All right, please like and subscribe. You can find this podcast, the video or audio version, on Just the Stats NFL on YouTube, where you can, if you're watching it, you can see the charts that I put up. Also, you can listen to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, whatever app you might use. And again, I appreciate you listening. Appreciate the comments that are sent my way. I try to respond back. And so that is a wrap for NFL Top 10s for Tuesday. I'm out till tomorrow. Talk to you later.